Hello, Morongo Basin and listeners around the world online at Z107.7fm.com. This is your Z107.7 local news for Sunday, September 1st, 2024. The desert is in pretty desperate need of water. After a couple of wet winters rolled through Southern California and pulled much of the state out of a long-designated drought, a lack of annual monsoon moisture or even a summer storm has left most of the Morongo Basin and the surrounding Mojave Desert anxiously awaiting some days with darker skies. Water sources like springs and oases have always been where humans have settled, especially in the desert, but as we humans continue to encroach on more natural habitat in the Mojave, bighorn sheep are finding their water sources drying up or becoming inaccessible.
What's happened in the past is bighorn sheep may be out in the mountains for a week, 2 weeks, and they'll deplete their moisture, and they'll go to a known water source, and they may walk miles to get there, and if they get there and the water is dry, they may not have enough energy to go to the next water source. Bighorn sheep will literally lay down, wait for rain or whatever, because a natural spring would have a natural recharge rate, but they could sit down in the shade and literally sit there until they expire from dehydration.
That was Scott Gibson from the Wild Sheep Foundation, and I met up with him earlier this month on July 12th to head up to Newberry Springs. The Society for the Conservation of Bighorn Sheep, or SBCS, install and maintain water tanks and guzzlers in wilderness areas like Newberry Springs that are critical for these groups of animals. The springs there were used to supply water to the Santa Fe Railroad, and that morning they were filling giant water totes in the back of volunteer trucks. Each water tote can hold hundreds of gallons of water, which will be driven up to the guzzler site and pumped up an incline into water tanks. The actual site of the guzzler system was quite a few miles back off the highway, on a nondescript dirt road that required a 4x4 at the very least. The first few trucks were already unloading their water via a pump and hose system that have to be run up the hill each time. The volunteer team made quick work on filling the two huge tanks, over 3,200 gallons of water pumped up into the dry hills, hopefully sustaining bighorn sheep herds that are waiting for rain just like us.
Springs now are overrun with not only native vegetation that's sucking up water, but they're also overrun with non-native vegetation, tamarisk, arundo, cheatgrass, non-native invasive species, and they're sucking up and competing with the water and sucking the water table down. Natural water just doesn't stand a chance today.
On my way back down the mountain, I stopped and talked with Craig, who was coiling hose. He motioned up to the top of the ridge above the Tenahas and the tanks, where a bighorn sheep was looking down at us. It was the first one I'd ever seen, and Craig said he was probably just waiting for us to leave so he could come down and get some water. If you want to join the Society for the Conservation of Bighorn Sheep on one of their water hauls, or if you're interested in volunteering to check on some remote guzzlers in some beautiful Mojave wilderness, you can see this story at our website for some links. We'll have a longer version of this story there too. Just go to Z107.7fm.com. And that's your local news for Sunday. You can hear local news 7 times a day, 7 days a week at 7, 8, 9, noon, 4, 5, and 6. More Morongo Basin residents get their local news from Z107.7 than any other source. Reporting out of Joshua Tree, California, alongside the award-winning Z107.7 news team, I'm Robert Hayden.